Is this movie a reboot, a remake, a requel, or is it a little bit of both? I think it's a mixture of all those things. And that's why I think this is one of the best remakes I've ever seen. I'm going to break down the good and break down the bad and explain why for Evil Dead 2013. Let's start with the good. Mia, a drug addict, is determined to kick the habit. To that end, she asks her brother David, his girlfriend Natalie, and their friends Olivia and Eric to accompany her to their family's remote forest cabin to help her through withdrawal. Eric finds a mysterious book of the dead at the house and reads aloud from it, awakening an ancient demon. Because of that, all hell breaks loose when the malevolent entity possesses Mia. Director Fede Alvarez, and hopefully I said his first name correctly, takes the innovative and groundbreaking work that Sam Raimi did in the first Evil Dead movie and the second one, and not only does he modernize it, but I think he also improved it and made it better, especially from Evil Dead 1. One aspect that he pays homage to and uses really effectively is that POV shot that Sam Raimi uses to show the entity chasing towards his victim. The way he used it here, it made the entity seem a lot more aggressive, and also he showed us what the victim sees before it grabs them, a deadite version of themselves, and why they're so scared. It's not just this evil force that's pushing upon them, they're actually seeing what they're about to become, and I thought that was really, really great. My biggest complaint about the original Evil Dead film is that I wasn't invested in any of the characters at all. I didn't find most of them very interesting, but I was definitely more invested in these characters because there is an emotional core here that's built, that why they're at this cabin is not just because they're just being foolish kids. There is a meaningful reason, and they all have different distinct personalities, which got me invested in each of them. Maybe not Natalie that much, but Brian, David, and especially Mia all had distinct personalities that I can see people that in my life that are like them, and I understand they all have positive intentions. So it made me want them to survive this situation. With Mia recovering from withdrawal and getting help from her friends at this cabin that her parents own, the cabin looks almost exactly like the cabin from the first two films, and it feels like a little bit updated, even with the swing in the opening, the shed on the side, and it's completely run down. It does not look like somewhere anyone should stay. There's a stench in there that Mia smells, and the beginning of the film really showcases that people have been dealing with the Deadites for generations, and this is just a spot that it keeps on happening for whatever reason. I like that what they did here was Mia was dealing with her own personal demons, and she has to deal with like real life demons at the same time. And the things that were holding her back as a person with the regular non-seeing, like non-physical demons is what she has to overcome to face these physical real ones. And Brian, a character that I really did not like for most of this movie, but actually came around towards the end because of his heroic nature. He foolishly finds the Book of the Dead and starts reading from it, even though in the book itself it says do not read out loud, do not write it, do not sketch, don't do anything, throw the book away. It seemed like he was obsessed or like interested in voodoo and other magical things before he even got the book, but he just kept going and going and going, and because of what he did, he unleashes the evil, and Mia unfortunately is the one that gets possessed, the one that has the weakest will at the time, because she's going through such a bad withdrawal before this even happened. And I gotta say that Jane Levy's performance throughout the whole film carries this film so well. She does such a great job as playing this character that seems hopeful to fight off this drug addiction she has. Then when she gets into the withdrawal and how crazy, but like how, like, if you've ever seen somebody going through withdrawal, how they feel and act and how depraved they feel, to getting infected and possessed by the evil entity that's no one knows what's going on about. Getting infected, seeing something in the forest, trying to escape, crashing the car, and then the writers and the directors recreating that infamous controversial tree scene from the first film that even Sam Raimi regrets doing, but reusing that scene that not great and doesn't age really well, but modernizing it and using it as a very messed up way to infect the host and kind of talk about it as like it violating the person that it's possessing. And I think that they used it really, really well. As disturbing as it is and as scary it is, it's a horror film. So it made sense that something like that would happen. And it was so extreme, and it really made me wince. And then once the infection and the possession starts taking over Mia's performance, Jane Levy's performance, the terror in her eyes. Oh my God. Like, she did such a great job. It was like she was seeing what she was scared of in front of her and no one else could see it. And it was just really convincing. And she did a great job of making me feel the tension building towards something happening. And then once she finally becomes a deadite, the movie goes into full gear. It puts its foot on your neck and does not let go. It's intense and terrifying and scary throughout, and it continues to go, go, go. The gore is some of the craziest gore I ever seen in a film. Especially what I liked about the first Evil Dead was the practical effects and how he did the gore and how it wasn't a lot of CGI, and they did such a great job with that aspect here, paying homage to a lot of the moments from that film and doing it here, but taking it to another level. And after I finished watching the movie, I found out that this movie uses the most amounts of fake blood in a movie ever. They use, I don't remember the exact number, but a certain amount of gallons of blood. And I know specific scenes that they did it when Mia throws up all her guts and blood onto Olivia, which was so gross, and basically infected her that way. And then the ending with the rain of blood and everything, that was absolutely insane. And it's really funny that this movie has that record in hand. And speaking of Olivia, her clawing at her face after she's desperately trying to help Mia, she's a nurse and everything, her clawing at her face, and that image when Brian finds her in the bathroom was absolutely terrifying. Some of the scariest practical use effects on a person, and Olivia's Jessica Lucas performance in that particular scene was phenomenal. She was absolutely terrifying. She was really dead on as a scary deadite, and one of the scarier deadites I've seen out of these 4 films so far. And the interaction and when she attacks Brian was some of the most disturbing, unnerving things that I've seen in a horror movie, and it made me want to cover my eyes a couple times. I was like, Jesus, when she started stabbing him. It was executed really, really well. It built the tension really, really well, and it made me scream at my TV like, please just don't open that door, leave her alone. But it's a horror movie, so they're gonna continue to make stupid decisions. And one of my favorite scenes in Evil Dead 2 is Ash having to saw off his own hand because it was infected and it was doing whatever it wants. And they pay homage to that here with Natalie having to chop off not just her arm but her whole forearm because it was infected. It got bit by Mia, and it was going to try to help and bust Mia out, and she didn't want that to happen. And it was so gnarly. It was great practical effects, and it was so disgusting. Some of the most disgusting, gnarly effects and horror moments I've seen in a film in a long time. And while there's more moments within the film, the nail gun scene and everything like that, nothing tops this third act. One of the best third acts I've seen in a horror film ever, probably. Like, I gotta give it high praise because I didn't expect it, because the first hour and something of the film might not be the best, and I'll talk about that more when I get to the bad section of this review. But the third act, oh my God! Like, once Mia is dead and her brother finds a way to resurrect her because they find a way in the book where you can remove the deadite from the person, and he has to end up sacrificing himself to fight off the now Brian who's become a deadite and putting the house on fire, and because that sets off the chain reaction of the demon getting what it needs, and Mia having to literally face a doppelganger deadite of herself, her demons manifested in this crazy strong zombie. I thought all that was really done well, and it weaved into the story. It made a lot of things feel more meaningful because they had all that backstory in the beginning. And from the rain of blood that was pouring down, the fire on the house and the way it lit up the scene, and Mia's desperation trying to get away from this terrifying entity that was chasing her, and her getting the chainsaw, a classic Evil Dead weapon, and using it to fight off the demon, to the demon still chasing her no matter what, and dropping the car onto her arm, and her sacrificing her arm, and having that heroic final girl moment, a moment like Ash, and doing one of the most gnarliest kills I've ever seen in a movie before, with the chainsaw straight to the head, splitting that deadite, that ultimate deadite in half, and how long it lasted and how the blood was splattered. It was insane. It was one of the most metal moments I've seen in a horror film ever, and I loved it. I couldn't believe how good that last 20 to 30 minutes end up being, because once Brian and David end up dying, I was like, okay, this is it. But I completely forgot throughout the movie it said that it needed 5 people to die, and the demon or the entity was going to be resurrected in physical form. And I was like, wow, there's still more going on in this movie. What else they're going to do to drag it out? And it didn't get dragged out. It was absolutely perfect and one of the best endings I've seen in a long time. I got to give props to the director, the writers, and everybody involved behind the camera, because not only did they pay homage to so many moments from the first 2 Evil Dead films and some of the directing style that Sam Raimi implemented in his movies from then, they also subverted expectations, took it to another level in terms of the gore and how serious it was, added emotional core. So they paid homage and recreated a lot of what happened in those films, but took it their own way. And I got to give them a lot of props for doing that, because it could have turned off a lot of Evil Dead fans because there's no humor in the film. They play it really serious. There's some humor here and there, but it's mostly played like for a serious horror film. So I commend them on that. Let's get into the bad. This is a remake of the first Evil Dead film, or at least a lot of the elements from the first Evil Dead film are here. And Evil Dead 2 too, because that's very similar to Evil Dead 1. It's almost a remake of that film itself, but just extended with more scenes and things like that. It's not that simple. It's a complicated history there, but it's funny because with the first Evil Dead, that first 45 minutes, maybe, I was in and out in terms of the engagement. I wasn't fully invested in the characters or what was going on, and I felt some of the filmmaking when they were talking and stuff was a little choppy. And while the filmmaking here is not choppy, I wasn't fully invested in everything that was going on when they were trying to deal with her sickness and trying to help her, because I knew what was going on. I was just like, come on, guys, just get the hell up out of here. I didn't fully care about everything. I think that the characters, outside of Jane Levy's Mia and a little bit of David, he was pretty good as well. Felt flat a little bit for me, and we're making dumb decisions, and it's hard for me to get invested when characters are making really, really dumb decisions in horror films. Splitting up when they know that there's demons in the house and different things that they did that I was just like, oh my God. But just like with the first Evil Dead, once that third act started, it got really crazy. That's when my investment got in and I was on the edge of my seat. But it's just that first 45 minutes is not super engaging. It's not bad, but I wasn't really into it and really loving it until it got to the later half. So that's why it carries the film down, because there's so many phenomenal moments in that end of the second act to the third act that I've never seen in other movies. But before that, it kind of feels like the run-of-the-mill early 2000 horror movie that you would see with that washed out film grain and the way it looks like the Crazies and other films that were coming around that time. A lot of those aspects are there that doesn't make it feel super original, which is weird because the first Evil Dead does feel like an original and different from everything that was coming out. This one doesn't. It feels like it's taking from what it was coming out during that year or during that decade and just applying the Evil Dead formula throughout and then towards the end. So it made it not feel as special. The only other thing was that, the Evil Dead franchise up until this point was very comedic. And it got more comedic as it went. And I actually liked the goofiness and the comedic side of it to balance the horror and the gore. And this movie plays it super serious. And it was like 1 or 2 comedic moments when Mia turned into the Deadeye and she was being pushed into the basement. And it's something that she said that I was like, whoa, I had to rewind a couple times. Like, did she just say that to her brother? And I wish they leaned more into that during those early scenes. I think that would have freshened up the film a little bit and made it funny, and then switch back to that serious tone when it needed to. I hope that moving forward they find a way to balance the dark comedy and the seriousness, because I do wish that the original Evil Dead's had a little bit more seriousness in it, but I also wanted this one to have a little bit more of the comedy and dark humor. So it doesn't have that balance there, and it does take away some of the specialness that the franchise has, adapt certain aspects to it. So that also held it back a little bit for me. It not having that comedy there, because that's some of my favorite parts of the franchise. Let me get into my verdict. So overall, I think this is the template for how you reboot a franchise or remake a movie that in a beloved established franchise. They paid homage while still forging their own path. It feels like a remake because there's so many aspects that are similar to the first Evil Dead and the second Evil Dead in this film, almost beat for beat, and certain weapons and everything like that. But it also feels like a reboot because there's a whole new cast of characters and there's no direct reference said in the film that Ash or his family was, or his rest of his friends and things that events that happened there happened. But it also feels like a requel and kind of like in universe because there's all references in the book and other stuff that happens in the film where I'm like, yeah, this feels like this just happens decades after the first couple movies. And even with Bruce Campbell coming at the end, saying groovy and everything like that, makes me feel like this is a continuation of the franchise. And they just mixed a bunch of different things in a way that other franchises does not. And I really, really enjoyed that a lot. If you're the type of person that loves the horror aspects and the gore aspects of the Evil Dead franchise, this is the one for you. Unlike Army of Darkness that leads super into the goofy, this one doesn't have the goofy at all. So it tipped the scale the other way. And I really, really enjoyed it. And I think it has a really good mixture of a lot of the best parts of the Evil Dead, but it just lacks the comedy and goofiness that I like from the franchise. So with that said, I'm going to give it a C+. Did you like it? Did you hate it? What would you rate Evil Dead from 2013? Is it your favorite? Is it in the middle? Is it your least favorite? Let me know those thoughts down below in the comments, and let me know if you're excited for Evil Dead Rise, which feels like a successor to this film directly. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you can be notified of my reviews, reactions, live discussions, trailer reactions, and much, much more. You can watch more of my content right now.